Welcome and thank you for standing by. All participants will be able to listen only until the question and answer session of today's conference. At that time, if you would like to ask a question, you may do so by pressing star, then 1, and recording your first and last name. Today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the call over to your host for today, Ms. Irene Ihier. Ma'am, you may begin.
Hello, and welcome to today's FDA webinar. I am Irene Ihier of CDRH's Office of Communication and Education. On July 28, 2016, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration issued the final guidance document, General Wellness, Policy for Low-Risk Devices, which explains that the FDA does not intend to actively regulate low-risk technologies that are intended for general wellness use only. The focus of today's webinar is to share information and answer questions about the final guidance document. Today's presenter is Simon Choi, Senior Science Health Advisor from the Office of the Center Director. Following the presentation, we will open the line for your questions related to topics in the final guidance only. Additionally, there are other center subject matter experts available to assist in the Q&A portion of our webinar. Now, I give you Simon.
Thank you, Irene. Good afternoon. This afternoon, we'd like to cover the overview of the guidance that went out last July and also provide you access to a Q&A session. First, a little background about the guidance. The draft went out January 20 of 2015. We received 12 comments. The basic tenets of the guidance remain unchanged, and the final guidance was published July 29th of 2016. I want to provide you with an overview. FDA encourages development of general wellness products such as fitness trackers, which can empower individuals to take a more active role in managing their health. The final guidance takes a hands-off approach to the regulation of low-risk general wellness products that only promote a healthy lifestyle or promote a well-known association between a healthy lifestyle and a certain chronic disease or condition. FDA will continue to focus its oversight on products that are invasive, implanted, or pose greater risk to patients. The key principles in the guidance. CDRH does not intend to examine low-risk general wellness products to determine whether they are devices within the meaning of the Food and Drug Cosmetic Act, or if they are devices, whether they comply with the pre-market review and post-market regulatory requirements. Some of those requirements are registration and listing, pre-market notification, labeling requirements, good manufacturing practice requirements, as well as MDRs, also known as medical device reporting requirements. In the guidance, we define general wellness products that have to meet 2 criteria. They only intended for general wellness use and present a low risk to safety of users and other persons. This is the highlight for the entire talk this afternoon. Your product must have only a general wellness claim, and it must meet the criteria of low risk as defined in the guidance to equate to a low-risk general wellness product. To go a little bit more in depth, this describes the details of what's in the guidance. For low risk, the product must be meeting these 3 criteria. The product must not be invasive, it must not be implanted, and it must not pose risk. Going back to the first one, when the product is not invasive as defined in the guidance, it must not penetrate or pierce the skin. In addition, I'll refer you to page 5 of the guidance that says the FDA recommends that you look at whether we currently regulate the product of the same type. The other criteria was the claims or intended use. So you can have a general wellness claim that does not mention any reference to a disease or condition, so the intended use is pretty straightforward. It just relates to maintaining a healthy lifestyle. The other subcategory is intended use relates to a healthy lifestyle with reference to a disease or a condition. And if you do that, the role of the outcome. Well, healthy lifestyle choices may play an important role in the health outcome for the disease or condition, but that outcome must be well understood and accepted. For the purpose of this guidance, the claims or intended uses are twofold. Intended use that relates to maintaining or encouraging general state of health or healthy activity, or intended use relates to the role of healthy lifestyle and it mentions a chronic disease or condition. The first category of intended use relates to encouraging general state of health or healthy activity but does not make any reference to disease or condition. Some examples: a claim to promote or maintain a healthy weight, encourage healthy eating, or assist with weight loss goals, or claims to promote relaxation or manage stress. I refer you to Section 3 of the guidance for additional examples of these claims. Again, the first category is when there's no mention of disease or condition. You can claim to promote relaxation or manage stress, claim to improve mental acuity, concentration, problem solving, multitasking, or you can claim to enhance learning capacity. Claims to promote physical fitness, promote sleep management, to promote self-esteem. All examples of the first category of intended use. The second category of intended use relates to the role of the healthy lifestyle where you do mention a chronic disease or condition. When you mention a chronic disease or condition, there are two subcategories. Your product can promote, track, and or encourage choices which, as part of a healthy lifestyle, may help to reduce the risk of a certain chronic disease or condition, or your product promotes, tracks, and encourages choices which, as part of a healthy lifestyle, may help to living well with certain chronic disease or conditions. Now we going over specific examples of these. So one example is a product that promotes physical activity as part of a healthy lifestyle that may help to reduce the risk of high blood pressure. Another example is a software that tracks your calories, helps you manage a healthy eating plan, and may help living well with high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes. Another example, product tracks your sleep patterns and promotes healthy sleep habits that may help reduce the risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Again, I refer you to Section 3, page 4 to 5 for additional examples. The concept of low risk is not to be confused with low risk and classification of devices. As defined in this guidance, you must be able to answer yes to these three questions. Is the product invasive, implanted, or does it pose an intervention or technology that poses a risk to the safety of users if regulatory controls are not applied? There are some examples of products that present risk to the user safety and will not be considered low risk and therefore not a low risk general wellness product. A laser product that claims to improve a user's appearance by rejuvenating the skin. Although the claims of rejuvenating the skin and improving confidence in the user's appearance are general wellness claims, the technology itself poses a risk of skin and eye burns. That's referenced in Section 4 of the guidance, page 6. Implants promoted for enhanced sexual function. Implants pose risks to users such as rupture or adverse reaction to implant materials and risks associated with implantation procedure. So what are some examples of low-risk general wellness products? A mobile app that solely monitors and records your daily energy expenditure and cardiovascular workout activities to allow awareness of one's exercise activities to improve or maintain good cardiovascular health. This claim relates to a specific organ only in the context of general health, does not refer to any disease nor medical condition. The monitoring or recording of exercise activities present risks such as inaccuracy when made in the absence of disease or medical claims, but the technology itself does not pose risk to the safety of users. Therefore, this product will be considered a low-risk general wellness product. Another example is an app that monitors and records food consumption to manage dietary activity for weight management. This claim relates to dietary choices and is a general wellness claim, and the technology does not pose risk to the users or other persons. Another example is a portable product that is intended to monitor the pulse rate of users during exercise. This claim also relates only to exercise and hiking, does not refer to a disease or condition. It is a general wellness claim and therefore considered a low-risk general wellness product. Now I'd like to transition to the Q&A session.
Thank you. At this time, we'd like to begin the question and answer session of the conference. If you would like to ask a question, please press star, then 1. You must record your first and last name to ask your question, and to withdraw your question, you may press star, then 2. Once again, to ask your question, please press star, then 1, and record your first and last name clearly. One moment for the first question, please. The first question comes from Jennifer Lieb. You may ask your question.
Hi. Just want to make sure you can hear me all right.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you. So my question is, the final guidance includes 2 examples of that are not eligible for enforcement discretion where there's an element of prediction included based on a test result. One is a web-based product in the form of a computer game that claims to diagnose or treat autism, and the other was one that claims to enhance athletic performance by providing suggestions based on the results of an invasive blood test. So my question is, I was hoping that you can describe or provide an example of what types of prediction, when combined with promotion or encouragement, would be eligible for enforcement discretion. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'd like to introduce to Patel, Associate Director of Digital Health here.
Oh, hi. This is Bakul. So just reflecting back on your question, I think you asked about what kinds of products that would fit the general wellness claim or general wellness, which would be for athletic performance. I think when we talk about exercise, we're talking about general healthy lifestyle and healthy living. There may be nuances that I'm not quite getting from your question, but it's mostly from the guidance perspective. We've been talking most importantly about healthier living, and if products are helping folks be healthier, and it's not about cardiovascular performance or anything like that, but it just happens to be about healthy living is what we are trying to say. That's general wellness. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I think what I was more referring to was the aspect of prediction when it's combined with promotion. So I don't know if you could speak to, would it matter if a wellness product prediction was based upon like a proprietary unpublished algorithm? But I was hoping you could speak toward the prediction aspect of it.
Yeah, so I think it's important to sort of differentiate what we are calling out in this policy as general wellness products and the claims where we are saying are for healthy wellness living as opposed to diagnosing or a prediction or screening. I think that's a different topic outside the scope of this guidance to talk about, and it's a larger, broader topic of where FDA looks at in terms of screening and prediction and other types of diagnostics that may be related to a particular disease or condition.
Thank you. Once again, if you would like to ask a question, please press star, then 1, and record your first and last name. One moment, please.
Operator, do we have any more questions?
One moment. The next question comes from Bill Jones. You may ask your question.
Thank you. I'd just like to quickly thank Simon and Bakul and the digital health team at the FDA for presenting this webinar. I have two questions for you, if that's okay. I'll ask one at a time. So the guidance states that one factor to consider in determining if a product is a general wellness product is whether CDRH actively regulates products of the same type as the product in question. At the same time, the guidance states that a product that monitors pulse rate would be a general wellness product if the claims relate only to use during hiking or exercise, as you mentioned earlier. And products that monitor pulse rate for clinical purposes would, of course, be regulated as medical devices. So can you confirm that a primary factor for consideration as a general wellness product is not whether the FDA regulates a similar product, but rather whether it regulates a product with the same or similar intended use? In other words, I guess what I'm saying is, in the guidance, we'd say same type in the guidance. That means same intended use, correct?
Yes, so you got it correctly. I think it's. I would say, in addition to just intended use, what the product does and functionality of the product is also important to consider, and that's part of the calculus to think about. Is if a product is in pulse ox and it's used for clinical determination of some kind, and that would be considered to be part of that calculus. And for longest time, I think pulse oximeters have been sort of under certain portions of pulse oximeters have been under a different type of enforcement discussion, as you can see through the pro codes. So you have to take that into consideration of where those products fall in our current and what we're doing with those products currently, and as we regulate them. That's why when Simon talked about don't misread the low risk as what we consider low risk. Typically, when it's regulated and actively overseen. So there's two different things. For purposes of this guidance, you need to think about the product that's just promoting and motivating people to be healthy, and then, is it truly low risk from its either going to the three criteria?
Got it. Okay, great. So, yeah, so same type essentially means same intended use. My second question is, the guidance recognizes that certain general wellness products may present risks such as inaccuracy, but that such inaccuracy is not a concern in the absence of disease or medical condition claims, as Simon mentioned earlier. So can you confirm that the FDA would not deem a product to be outside the scope of a general wellness product solely because it may present a potential for inaccuracy if that inaccuracy does not present risk to the user or other people? Was that clear?
Right. I interpreted your question correctly. Some of all depending on the general wellness claim. This is apparently a general wellness claim, and the claim doesn't reference a disease or condition. That example that you posted or mentioned about the inaccuracy not affecting the overall risk identified in the guidance is correct.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
The next question comes from Colin Pollard. You may ask your question.
Yeah, this may be parsing the guidance a little bit, but I just was wondering whether FDA would consider an intravaginal product to be a low-risk product. It doesn't pierce the skin, but obviously it's introduced into the vagina like a tampon or something like that.
So this is
I'm not saying the device would be a tampon. I'm just giving an example of an intravaginal product.
Understand. This is Bakul, and I wanted to express the point I think which was raised by the previous question is in also looking at intended use and what we are doing currently with those products, those type of products, and the intended use sort of plays into the calculus. So yes, so if it doesn't have to be under the skin to be called implanted, it does pose a risk to patients, and that's what we're talking about. Some sort of involves an intervention or technology that may actually pose risk to users. And we would think, and again, in this scenario, the hypothetical scenario that you're posing, we could definitely engage with FDA to sort of get deeper into if it's a particular question, but we would consider if there's a product that's inserted into the body and could cause risk and we have regulated in the past, we would continue to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The next question comes from Urmi Asher. You may ask your question.
Hi. If there are high-risk contraindications for a general wellness product, does that device manufacturer then have to spell out all the potential risky contraindications? Example, pulse rate monitors being used by a patient with arrhythmias during exercise.
We may have missed your first part of your statement. Can you repeat that, please?
So I'll repeat the question. If there are high-risk contraindications for a general wellness product, does the device manufacturer have to spell out all potential risky contraindications? Example, the continuous heart rate monitors that are being used during exercise. And if the patient has arrhythmias, does the manufacturer have to spell out everything ahead of time, or the onus is on the patient to make the decisions on their own?
Yeah. Give us 1 second. I'm going to give the microphone to Linda Ritchie, who can address this.
Hi, this is Linda Ritchie from the Office of Device Evaluation. So I'm going to get at your question in a little different way. If you have a product that meets the general wellness its definitions, as we've talked about pulse rate being for exercise, that does not mean that we expect anybody that is using that general wellness product to be free of risk. So in terms of the medical device aspect for that device, if it is a general wellness product, then it is incumbent upon the manufacturer for that device, just like with any other general purpose device, to make sure that they have appropriate cautions on that device. But that is outside of what FDA would regulate at that point.
Signing in, let me just add that on page 2, section 2 of the guidance, that says the product inclusion under the general wellness policy.
Sorry, I can't hear the gentleman speaking right now.
Sorry, let me try that again. On page 2 of the guidance, section 2, let me just read this one sentence that says, the product's inclusion under this general wellness policy in this guidance does not establish that it has been shown to be safe and or effective for its intended use.
So then the problem can be tackled in 2 different ways. One is either spell out all the contraindications up front and, specify in detail the intended use, which automatically puts all the contraindications out of that basket.
I'm going to just talk to what Linda just mentioned, and maybe in a slightly different way. I think what Linda mentioned was, I think like any other general purpose product, there are things that manufacturers will do and claim and share with their users that may not necessarily be for medical purposes. And there may be things that maybe they may say, or the functionality of the product is limited, that it does not do any medical purpose that they find under the definition of a device. So it's a choice the manufacturers, we rely on the choice the manufacturers make, and we are providing guidelines in this guidance document to say that we expect people who are making general wellness products to be in this category, except if they're only if they are in the low risk as we have defined. So, and again, we leave it back to the manufacturer to sort of define what those indications, cautions, warnings, whatever contraindications, if you think may want to be you want to share with your users.
Thank you.
The next question comes from Miraj Patel. You may ask your question.
Does FDA cover certain wellness products in the home health benefit?
Can you expand on that, because I'm not quite sure.
For those under Medicare that had to go on the home health benefit due to recovery from a medical condition or a medical impairment, how does FDA reckon that they explain what general wellness products are covered under the home health benefit? Because I did not get a proper explanation when I broke a knee and my leg, and I needed to get recovered.
Hi, this is Linda Ritchie again from Office of Device Evaluation. So in this guidance, we're discussing the regulatory framework for products that have general wellness. When it gets to decisions on insurance and how things would be covered for these types of products, that is really outside of the purview of this agency.
Do you think it's fair in America for some people to get facts and evidence from instructions from wherever they're getting them for general wellness, while other American citizens have to research things on their own for general wellness? Do you think that's fair that there are people getting like general wellness information from the Part A Medicare claims system, those worksheets and information from SISS and other people have to put in their own self-sufficiency to figure that out?
Thank you so much for your question. Unfortunately, that question is out of the scope of today's presentation. But if you could please send your question or your comment to DICE, that's DICE, at fda.hhs.gov, and someone will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you, and we'll take our next caller.
The next question comes from Doug Atkins. You may ask your question.
Hello. In some recent guidance documents that have been issued, the term enforcement discretion has been used by FDA, whereby devices or particular products may be medical devices, but the FDA is choosing not to enforce requirements. So my question is for products that would meet the definition of general wellness products in this guidance, is the policy or is the position of FDA that these products don't indeed meet the definition of a medical device, or is it more that FDA is going to practice enforcement discretion in these instances?
So this is Bakul. Let me take that question. I think it's a really good question. So one of the very first things in Section 2 of, I'd say on page 2 of the guidance which we talk about is, and Simon covered this in his presentation, was there may be general wellness products that do not meet the definition of a medical device, and there may be general wellness products that do meet the definition of a medical device for all kinds of various reasons, either its functionality or claims, just to keep that in perspective. And when we are exercising our option and discretion to enforce or enforce compliance to the rules and regulations, we only do that for those that potentially could meet the definition of a medical device. So it's important for manufacturers and others to sort of think about it from the perspective of if there are products that we don't FDA does not currently think would meet the definition of a medical device, we would continue to be that way. That does not mean that we'll be calling them or including them as medical devices. But in case there are products that are medical devices and they fit the scope of the description of the products as described in this guidance document, that i.e. low risk, then we would not be enforcing our compliance or enforcing compliance towards the regulations.
Just a quick follow-up to that is, so in some of these categories of things for which FDA, for which they may be devices, the FDA is going to be having the policy of enforcement discretion. Are there plans to issue any regulations for these categories of devices such that they could be rightfully classified as Class 1 or Class 2 as opposed to being unclassified and, automatically Class 3 just for purposes of understanding what, if any, if FDA did in fact had the policy to enforce regulations, what would be applicable?
Yeah, for those, this document specifically talks about those low-risk general wellness products that we are saying that we would not enforce, which means that regardless of, that means we are not even going to the exercise of classification for these type of products that are low risk. And for those that we are currently regulating, we will continue to do that, but that's the approach. So we have not crossed that thought process for this low risk. We don't think it's necessary for us to go engage in a classification activity.
So just one quick follow-up. So just trying to square that with the MDDS example where classification regulation was enacted and for classification for MDDS, but still they're under enforcement discretion. How is that? How in your mind is that a different case, or is that just different activities that were taking place a couple of years ago?
Yeah. So thank you, and probably you have to get off to the next question. Yep. But I'll just touch on this. MDDS classification was done prior to our policy of enforcement or choosing to not to enforce on those products. So that's the difference. And we are proactively looking at low risk and setting a policy that we would not be choosing to enforce on some of these low risk products.
The next question comes from Martin Cohen. You may ask your question.
Okay. To get a perspective, I have there's a product that is it has a theory behind it, so kind of a scientific theory behind it. But is there any need to go into the background theory? I mean, do they care about that? Something may activate something in the thalamocortical system to change the way, say a general wellness feeling when the product itself is non-invasive, non-implanted, and it wraps around a part of the body that has kind of a pressure point, similar to acupressure. I mean, do I need to go into the theory or do they care at all, or do they just want to? They don't care about the claims. They just want to know, is it safe? So, or is it okay to refer back to a book that, the theory behind it? Or, I mean, how much do I need to go into anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things for today's presentation and discussion, we don't intend to get into very specific topics because it may just derail the conversation, but I actually would welcome you reaching out to, again, the email address is dice@fda.hhs.gov, and we probably can help get back to you with specific response in terms of your scenario you're posing. It's dice@fda.hhs.gov. Hopefully we can get you an answer once you pose the question to that email address.
Okay, yeah, and thank you for all the other questions. It's helped me a lot too, similar to my ideas of mine. But and also, and other people were kind of going around this issue. Is there any way to look at a product that already exists and find out if that has been classified as a general wellness product? Just to is there any access to information like that?
Those products, so those products, I think this is related to previous questions, those products that are currently classified are present in our classification database. You should be able to look that up online. And part two of your question was if there are general wellness products that we call them or we have identified them and by this guidance a low risk. Obviously, they are not classified, and this was a discussion we just had in the previous caller who talked about FDA is taking a proactive approach towards not engaging in that discussion and also not enforcing when they meet the definition of what we call low-risk general wellness products.
The next question comes from Michael Chelson. You may ask your question.
Yes, thank you so very much for taking the questions. In the example of an accessory to a Class II device, such as a piece of exercise equipment intended to be attached to an AC-powered articulating hospital bed, would that be considered a low-risk wellness product under the enforcement discretion of this guidance?
So again, this may be that question particularly on accessories is a little bit outside the scope of this guidance because we do have a draft document on accessories out there and we're working on finalizing it. But I think your question clearly falls into that. And again, this document and this guidance document focuses only on those things that are back to the fundamentals of the document is about promoting, encouraging, and motivating people to stay healthy. So your scenario may not necessarily fit into that situation, and you may want to look for when we have the discussion on accessories.
Okay, thank you very much.
The next question comes from Gabe Jarrett. You may ask your question.
Yes, hi. When you read the guidance, it seems to refer basically to encouraging and promoting a healthy lifestyle. By definition, it seems that it's and a lot of the examples given are either mobile medical apps or pulse monitors, things of that nature, whereby the user is given information which he or she can then use to make decisions. In other words, the promotion is something which the user is doing. There's not a lot of examples, in fact, I don't think there's any, where the use of promotion is definitive to what the actual device itself is doing, in terms of the fact that maybe a device does something physiological to a part of the body which can lead to improvement or maintaining a wellness. The guidance gives an example of improved self-esteem by improving skin rejuvenation, but gives a negative example of, say, using a laser, which would pose a hazard. I guess my question is, if there is a device which is in low risk, but the device itself is doing something, again, physiological, whatever that is, and as a result of that, that process may help to improve general health or wellness of the individual. I might have asked that in a bit of an awkward way, but as you can see, a lot of the examples, I guess what's throwing me is the use of the word promote and encourage. That sort of implies something consciously done by the user rather than the actual device itself.
So thank you for your question. I think you're pointing out sort of the boundaries of where we don't consider products to be general wellness, and they may actually fit into what we have been regulating in the past as products that today we regulate products that are non-invasive but are still providing physiological signals or understanding of the physiology of a person or in relation to a disease or even general condition. And one of the things that we have said in this guidance document as part of the determining the risk of the product is also what regulations we have currently that we feel today where controls are necessary to provide the level of confidence and reduce the risk from any when these products don't work as intended.
Right. So if I could just quickly follow up. So in the guidance example of the example of improving a product that is improving self-esteem by improving skin rejuvenation, but that the laser component would pose a risk. If that would say a product which didn't involve a laser but something else, would that product still be a general wellness device?
Yeah. So any harm that could happen because of either laser or other energy that's exposed into a human body would be concerning, and we would not think at this time as meeting the criteria of low risk.
Right. I understand. Okay. I think that explains it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next question comes from Ginger Emmerich. You may ask your question.
Yeah, my question might fall into this accessory category that you had discussed earlier, but I'm wondering if you had a software that fit within this general wellness category and data from that general wellness software was pushed and pulled between regulated software, how the FDA would view that scenario.
One moment as we get that answer for you.
Hi, this is Linda Ritchie from ODE. There's a lot to be said about getting to the details. In general, and again, I'm not going to get into the accessory policy, but this, so getting back to the general wellness policy, if the device meets the definitions that we've laid out in this guidance, then it can be considered general wellness. There may be circumstances for other regulated devices to use information that was gathered during a general wellness product, and how that information would then be regulated would certainly fall under the regulated product and whatnot. But I think it's important to understand that this guidance is about those devices that are for general wellness, and that determining whether or not your product is a general wellness product should follow that guidance that is set forth.
We'll take our next question.
The next question comes from Claire Pigman. You may ask your question.
Yeah, hi. My question might be somewhat similar to other questions that have been asked, but it's related to a specific example provided within the guidance for a general wellness claim. It states in the guidance, claims to improve general mobility or to assist individuals who are mobility impaired or in a recreational activity, for example, sport wheelchairs, beach access wheelchairs. My question is, how is FDA differentiating these wheelchairs to those that require a 510K? As an example.
One second while we get that question for you, or that answer for you.
Would it be better, so we may need to do some little bit of research on that part. Is it if we can get your contact information and write to us, we would get back to you on that.
Okay.
So just send your question to DICE, that's DICE, at fda.hhs.gov, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
The next question comes from Patel Gobelinian. You may ask your question.
Hello, good afternoon. My question is about the use of these products, or the potential use of these products outside what they are marketed for, so basically sort of off-label use, and use that would have made them medical devices if that was the original intent of the design of the device. So whether this is because of word of mouth or because some doctors suggest or recommend the use of these devices to their patients. So I would like to know if you have any perspective around this potential problem.
I may not have gotten completely your question, but if you're asking the question whether these such products that we are describing in this guidance document, how would users know that they're available, and is that am I heading in the right direction?
No, it's more because I have a specific example. One of these armbands that's used to monitor the heart rate was used by a doctor to determine when the person who was wearing it had a heart attack. So say that this type of use becomes more widespread, and this device was not intended to actually be used in this way. So, but say that these become more widespread.
I see what you're asking now. Thank you for clarifying that. I think what you're asking is a little bit out of the scope of this particular guidance document, but it is more on sort of practice of medicine and how FDA looks at it from either off-label use or uses that doctors conduct between their patients and between the particular patients. So it's outside of the scope. I think this guidance document talks about what we consider low risk and what we don't consider low risk, and if we are providing criteria for that, and helping folks sort of predetermine either as doctors or for users to see where FDA's position is, and when they don't meet low risk, they should engage with FDA in terms of determining when if such product is actively overseen by FDA or not.
Thank you.
Once again, if you would like to ask a question, please press star, then 1, and record your first name clearly. One moment, please. The next question comes from Robert Jaron. You may ask your question.
Hey, guys. Does the CDRH Digital Health Group intend to create a web page for general wellness, similar to the page that exists right now for mobile medical apps, where you can post additional examples of general wellness claims, like the ones that you guys have on page 3 of the guidance? It would obviously be for informational purposes and not exhaustive.
Yes, and there is plans, this is Bakul, and there is plans of updating it and sort of expanding as we learn more, as we get questions through either DICE or for digital health. We haven't finalized anything yet, and we're exploring what that would look like, but yes, that's something that we're exploring.
Thanks.
The next question comes from Holly Drake. You may ask your question.
Hi. I have a similar question that might be related to a bullet point example on page 6 that talks about a product that uses blood samples to inform suggestions. If my product was a mobile app and I was a separate manufacturer from another manufacturer of, let's say, a BG meter, and I just partnered with them to say I wanted to import their downloads into my app to make suggestions, obviously they would continue to be regulated by FDA, but would my app be part of their system in that case and have to be regulated as well?
Yeah, so that particular example on page 6 that you referred to is to highlight the fact that if there's a system that collects blood and and collection of blood and storing, transporting is public health, from a public health perspective, can be risky, and that's really what we were trying to expose on that through that example. I think what you're talking about may be slightly different and may have a little bit more nuance, which includes MDDS policy and other things that may be outside the scope of this document. But this is primarily more geared and focused towards when you're promoting healthy lifestyle choices. That's something that we would consider under this particular guidance.
Okay, so if it was just taking the readings but not displaying it and just making a suggestion that maybe at this point your blood glucose is high, you should have a salad?
So might be better if I think you may pose that question to either DICE or digital health on this particular use case that you're raising, and we can work through there, and folks can work through the nuances and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
The next question comes from Jonathan Helska. You may ask your question.
Yes, thanks again to the FDA team for putting together this very helpful webinar. Generally speaking, would either a mobile app or a sensor collecting data directly from a patient that is used exclusively to support an FDA-regulated clinical trial, would you consider this to be a general wellness device or simply a tool that's used within the context of clinical research that would have to conform to the applicable regulatory requirements in either 21 CFR Part 312 or 812?
So since this is a medical device sort of guidance, we are laying out policy in terms of whether it's a medical device and what compliance activities we would do regardless. So I think your question may be a little bit outside the scope of this particular discussion today, where we don't discuss how these types of products may play a role in clinical trials or clinical research for that matter. And that's a discussion for clinical trials part. And again, it's more about use of tools in a clinical trial as opposed to whether it's a device or not a device. And this guidance focuses mostly on that, on the latter.
Thank you. That's very helpful. So if the device was used as part of a clinical trial, that doesn't necessarily designate it as a medical device or not, correct?
Yeah, typically that's a trial and a research by research question, whether it's a medical device or not, different considerations the researchers and the trial sponsors should think about, as most folks know, and that's a choice that the trial and the endpoints of the trial would probably determine. So again, it's out of the scope of this particular discussion, but that's the basis of what we're talking about here.
Great. Thanks for your helpful response.
The next question comes from Michelle Guinefay. You may ask your question.
Hi, this is Michelle Guinefay. Does FDA have any intention to perhaps look through prior device classifications or clearances to determine whether any products that were previously classified might fall within general wellness? And for example, I think before you or someone had mentioned the pulse oximeter example, where there's a classification for oximeters intended for sporting and aviation uses. And in the current classification database under the product code OCH, these are still listed as Class 2 devices, exempt from 510K requirements, but not GMPs or other general controls. So those seem to be like something that could possibly fall into the general wellness guidance now, but there's still that existing classification in the classification database. Is there any effort to maybe go through those to sort of reconcile those with the new guidance document?
I think that's a great suggestion for us to take back, Michelle, and look at sort of, I mean, there are not very many of those kind of things that are pointed out, but in the pulse oximeter case, we need to go look at and see whether we need to update anything that's currently on our databases. So great, thank you for that suggestion.
Well, and similarly, if someone had previously gotten their product either listed or cleared based on prior guidance from ODE, what would be the appropriate mechanism for them to consider withdrawing that listing or clearance if they believed it fell within general wellness now under the new guidance document?
I think that would be something we would recommend discussing with the branch or division.
Okay.
And coming to an agreement on sort of how moving forward that is the case or not.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The next question comes from Juan Persalo. You may ask your question.
Hi, good afternoon. I probably know the answer to this already, but I thought I'd ask it anyways. I see in the guidance document that laser technology is not considered a wellness product because it presents a risk to skin and eye burns. My thing is, what if we had a device that we knew that did not cause burns to eyes and skin? It's a laser device, and I was kind of wondering if this device still would not be considered a wellness product because it would still be a regulated product by the FDA.
In those cases, I would again go back to recommending you contacting FDA and getting in touch and sort of discussing with the appropriate branch or division. That's the best way to resolve this without getting into the understanding the details of what you're talking about.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Would that be the DICE that you were mentioning before?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
The next question comes from Colin Pollard. You may ask your question.
Yeah, thanks. And this is just more a general comment. There were several really insightful questions from the audience that you ended up suggesting that they write it in with an email to DICE. And I was wondering, is there a way that you might share those responses for us all?
So there was one question which asked about us creating a website or a page that sort of parses out some of the decisions and the discussions that we are getting through some of the emails. We may not be able to share exact responses or the product descriptions that we get on DICE or on digital health. But as we learn and we have knowledge to share, we will look at ways to sharing that.
That would be great.
Once again, if you would like to ask a question at this time, please press star, then 1, and record your first and last name. One moment, please. At this time, I'm showing no further questions and would like to turn the call back over to Ms. Irene Ihier.
Thank you. This is Irene Ihier. We appreciate your participation and thoughtful questions. Today's presentation and transcript will be made available on the CDRH Learn webpage at www.fda.gov/training/CDRH Learn by Friday, September 9th. If you have additional questions about the final guidance, please use the contact information provided at the end of this slide presentation. As always, we do appreciate your feedback. Again, thank you for participating, and this concludes today's webinar.
Thank you for your participation. You may disconnect at this time.